Hello. Okay, so today I'm going to try and answer one of the most common questions that writers are asked, which is, where do you get your ideas? And I think most writers find this a bit of a weird question, because I always kind of want to answer this question: how do you not get ideas? I mean, the world is weird and varied, and people are crazy. So how do you walk through the life not thinking? How do you walk through thinking, that's a story, that's a story, that's a story? A few years ago, this is always the example I give of like plot bunnies just in the street. I was walking down the street, I was running late, I was catching a train, so I was rushing, so I caught like one line of a conversation as I walked past these two women. So I have no idea what had been said before or after, but you can kind of imagine. And the only line of this conversation I heard was one woman turning to the other and saying, well, of course we were surprised to see him. It was his funeral. I mean, if you can walk past that and not get an idea for a story, then I don't know how to help you. I want to know why they were having a funeral for this person. At what point he turned up? I mean, there isn't a bit in the funeral service where you get to like put your hand up and go, "Oh, I object." It's not like the whole just impediment bit in the wedding service. Once they're funeraling you, they're funeraling you. So I really don't know what the etiquette is if you turn up in person. Anyway, so many questions. And that's just one example of a little plot bunny that comes out of life. So, ideas are everywhere. In many ways, ideas are the easy bit of writing a novel because they're just all over the shop. And sometimes an idea that gets worked up into an actual novel comes really easily. The novel that I've got coming out in January, A Season for Love, is based on the idea of a contemporary social season. Um, and that idea came to me pretty much fully formed. It's possible I've been watching too many Regency romances and reading too many Regency romances, but the idea popped into my head of, could you do a contemporary rom-com based on this idea? And a really, really contemporary rom-com with all of our kind of modern understanding of dating etiquette and sexual etiquette and consent, and with LGBTQ plus characters, and all of those things that are part and parcel of a modern dating landscape, uh, but which you don't often see in a Regency story. I mean, there absolutely are LGBTQ plus Regency romances out there, and we love that. But it's not something that you would necessarily expect to see in Jane Austen. So that idea of, how do I take that idea of a social season and bring it bang up to date, came to me pretty much fully formed, because that is the whole idea. You can express it in one sentence. Um, and I knew that I wanted to write that book, and I knew what that book was going to be when it was finished. And that's probably the quickest that I've ever gone from idea to finished manuscript. So I think I sent that book to my agent, I think 12 and a half weeks, so pretty much kind of 3 months to the day after I'd had the initial idea. So sometimes ideas come really easy, and as soon as it's there and it's in your head, it's ready to be written. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes ideas sit there and they need to percolate and they need to kind of bubble away, and it takes a bit of time to work from initial idea up to the version of that idea that is going to be sustainable over a whole novel. So, just as another example, All That Was Lost. All That Was Lost. This is the large print edition. Oh, look, super large print. But this came out in 2018, print, ebook, and large print, an audio book. And this book is about a stage medium. It's about a woman who claims that she can talk to the dead. And I'd had a version of that character in mind for probably 3 or 4 years before I wrote that book. And when I first had this idea of writing something about a stage medium, I was writing rom-coms at that point in my career, as I am again now. Um, and I tried to write her as a rom-com heroine, and it didn't quite work, which isn't to say it couldn't work. Other writers have absolutely made that work. But for me, it didn't quite work because what I was interested in was the kind of deception at the heart of this story. So my character can't talk to the dead, but she's made a living out of saying that she can. And that was what was interesting me, was the lie, it was the deception. And that I was really struggling to make light and fun and escapist and all those things that I would want a romantic comedy to be. Um, and what I also found was that I'd given my main character a mother who was also a stage medium, and she'd kind of, my main character in that rom-com idea, had sort of inherited the family business, if you like, or the family gift. Um, and that mother character, who was a kind of sort of old time, end of the pier, show business pro, I found I was far more interested in her than I was in the daughter, who was supposed to be the main character. Um, and so that idea, what a break. So that idea really did evolve over time, and I ended up writing a much more serious, much more sort of book club novel than I'd initially intended to. The daughter doesn't exist at all. The main character at the point where we meet her is childless. Um, and that book took years to evolve, and I wrote other things in between while I was kind of still percolating that idea in the back of my head, and it took a long time to come to fruition, for me to work out what it was about that idea, which initially was just writing a stage medium as a heroine, what it was about that idea that I was really interested in. And then once I'd worked out what it was I was really interested in, working out what the story and what the setting and what the world was that would allow me to tell the version of that story that I was really interested in. And some ideas are like that. So I've got an idea at the moment that is really half formed and isn't really even an idea for a novel. But everywhere that I visit, when I go places on holiday, when I go back to North Yorkshire, where I'm from, to visit family, I find myself being drawn to little just tidbits of stories about the sea. So some of those are historic, some of those are more kind of in the realm of myth and legend. Some of those are kind of folklore. Some of them are based on real incidents. So I went on holiday in the west of Scotland earlier this year, and I found this story, which is about a shipwreck, which I just came across in like a little local museum on Iona, which was fascinating. And I find myself just picking up all over the place just little tidbits of stories about the sea and about a community's interaction with, dependence on, relationship with the sea, whether that is for the sea sustaining a community through fishing, through trade, through imports, through travel, whatever that might be, through tourism, or whether it's about the threat and the danger that the sea provides in a community. And I don't quite know what that story is yet. I've had a couple of stabs at it, so I wrote a whole draft of a dual timeline based in a small seaside town, had a historical thread and a contemporary thread, and there was a thread of sort of history and mythology in there. Just didn't quite work. I think I was just trying to shoehorn too many ideas in rather than taking the sort of vague sense of an idea that was swimming around in my head and really excavating that to find out what is it you're really interested in here, what is it that you want to focus on. So that's a little tip to take away. If you have a kind of vague, swirling sort of idea of there's something interesting here, but I don't yet know what it is, rather than throwing more stuff at it, spend some time in that idea and see if you can kind of excavate it and find the nub, find the diamond, the interesting, exciting bit at the centre of it, and then build back out from there. Because that's what I think I failed to do at my first stab of trying to bring this idea to fruition. So at the moment, that idea is still there. It's still percolating. I will write something inspired by that at some point, I don't know what yet. I don't know who the characters are. I don't even know what time period it'll be set in. It's just percolating there, and it just needs a little bit more time. So the question was, where do you get your ideas? The answer was all over the shop, but actually, it's what you then do with those ideas that matters. Ideas really are the easy bit. Some of them come very, very easily. Some of them take a bit more time to work through. Um, but give them that time. And remember, I think sometimes people forget this. If you have an idea that you think is absolute gold, but you can't quite work out what it is yet, I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves, particularly when we're writing a first novel, that this first novel is your book and it has to be perfect and it has to be your baby. It's absolutely fine to take that idea, however wonderful it is, pop it on the back burner, let it simmer a little bit longer, let it richen. Richen? Is richen a word? Enrichen? Enrich? Enrichment? Richify? No, richify, anyways, let it get richer. That'll do. That's good words. Let that idea get richer. Um, and come back to it over time. And you might just find that going away and writing something else gives you that perspective to look at that previous idea and go, oh, actually, that's what I'm interested in. And that's the video for today. Please, please, please subscribe to the channel. It makes all the difference. If you like this video, hit like. Please also do share this video and this channel with writing and reading friends. And I will be back next Friday with a brand new video.